types of denial, don't they? Just explain what you mean by types of denial.
Well, one of the things that's very useful, I think, that comes out of this interdisciplinary discussion in the book is a synthesis of different forms of denial. And to be very quick about it, there's denialism, which is industry and politically driven. Attempts to sow doubt. There's that kind of
so an industry which has a vested interest.
It has a vested interest in sowing doubt so that people, won't take it seriously. But then we go to two forms of denial, which are really quite fundamental. One is negation. When you get denial, it's always that you're always denying reality. It's always that you've seen reality somewhere and you're trying to keep it at bay. Negation is where you just say, well, it's not true. And actually negation, although it looks more severe, is a step on the way to accepting reality. It's the beginning of the grief process. My loved one hasn't died. And we understand that, and then you struggle through. But the serious form of denial is disavowal with climate change. And this is what we're really stuck in at the moment. This is the diagnosis. It's where you turn a blind eye. You see it with one eye and you minimise it. And this is really what Paul's paper is about. And just to add one point I'd like to, and then I'll stop. I think Paul's paper really brings into focus that if we're going to look at denial, we don't start with the individual. We actually start with a culture. We're in a culture of denial. And then, of course, we have individual feelings about that. But that's where we start.
Let me turn to you. Of course, I mean, these questions of various sorts of denial. I should just mention in this someone who we mentioned on this programme a couple of weeks ago who sadly died, Stan Cohen, who contributes to this volume and whose book, States of Denial, was quite influential in this respect. Paul, would you like to just pick up on that disavowal, on what we mean by disavowal, or perhaps talk about, you could talk about it as a perverse state of mind?
Yeah, well, it's a state of mind in which we might acknowledge the facts, but we acknowledge the facts in a way which no longer disturbs us. So it doesn't affect us emotionally, and therefore it doesn't actually drive us or motivate us to
What
do
would be an
anything
example of that, say?
Well, a good example would be flying. I think a lot of us know that for every flight we take, for example, across the Atlantic, is equivalent to about 2 tons of CO2 dumped in the atmosphere. Yeah? And yet, in a way, and I'm as guilty about this as anybody else, somehow or other we, at the moment of thinking of flying, that fact and the implications of that fact in a way that would disturb us are got rid of.
It's because we're, in a way, all members of a community which is, in fact, as you say, engaged in these sort of ecological practices, and to expect us to rise up. I mean, somebody said, I think it was Anne Carp in a review, talked about the possibility of sort of people who are involved in the gay movement, being required to sort of almost to be... she was arguing the other way around. She was arguing that really it's rather like expecting the evangelist to sort of come up on behalf of the gay movement in some ways. Here are people who at the same time are holding two contradictory ideas. I am spending all this money on travelling, but at the same time I want to save the planet. But I mean, but I would have thought, so I mean, you say that we're denying, but yet I turn on the television, I seem to see constant programmes, nature programmes, telling me about what's happening to the earth. There doesn't seem to be much evidence of denial or disavowal going on there.
People are increasingly aware of what's happening. They're also increasingly aware of weird weather, Hurricane Sandy and our own weather. And one of the things that's gone into in the book is that disavowal is turned to when there's a bit too much reality just to block it off. And then you have to find ways of minimising it, so that Obama will say at the moment he's just made an inaugural speech and he's taking climate change seriously, and what's in the papers is Beyonce was sinking her. So that's the important thing, not what Obama was saying about climate change. That's the way we then manage it in states of disavowal.
And of course you want to, we've got to stop there, but I mean you want to say that there's possibility for us to move beyond this, to do something very quickly?
Yes, I think the first thing we need to do is to understand it and to allow ourselves to have feelings about this, one of which is depression. Not overwhelmed, but just to take it seriously.